It's the Dev Friday Show with Mark and Tim.
It's Friday, running a little behind. I actually haven't even uploaded last week's show or even got that ready to go because, like I said, running behind. At least I think I'm recording this week. There's something I was good. Just like I can't even remember what's anyway. So it was my mom's. Here's the thing.
You sound like you have it all together today.
yeah. So I think we got this going. Oh, it's my mom's birthday today, and she's not gonna be able to come over for dinner. So we did a breakfast, and wow, we have a guest just dropping in and out of the thing, and it says no video feed. I don't even know who that is. Did you give the URL to somebody?
I did not.
This is crazy stuff. I don't even know what's going on.
Keep this locked down.
Yeah. What is this? We're gonna get. Was it Zoom bombing? Is that when people just remember before Zoom made you have like a password and like a waiting room and all that? People just throw a URL and just drop into rooms. It just left again. The guest keeps coming in and out. What in the world? And I don't think you hear it, but I hear it.
I do not.
I hear a little bloop, bloop as they go in and out. This is interesting. I don't know if we're being, who knows? I'm going to remove that guest. So we'll see if somebody else pops up. Wow. I have no idea it's my mom's birthday. Is that what there's a guest
how you
again.
Started,
The whole this entire show, I'm just going to be like, there's a guest again because it keeps buzzing in my ear when it happens. It's my mom's birthday. She's not going to be able to come over for dinner. So instead of doing a dinner, she asked for breakfast. I don't know if you ever had fried bread dough. It was something that she grew up with, right? Yeah. You just take like bread dough and fry it in a pan for breakfast. So we did that. Only I did it in a Dutch oven with a little bit like as a deep fat fryer type thing. It was really good, but I don't usually eat breakfast. I don't usually eat till noon, and that I work well on that schedule. I've got a bunch of carbs on me now, and I'm about ready to fall asleep. That's exactly that's where I'm at for this show. I'm about ready to fall asleep. But
see, and I'm so motivated for this day. I woke up at 5 o'clock this morning.
5 o'clock.
I've been up and at 'em and
just been sitting there
away,
waiting for me to jump in. And we're 5 minutes late because I had to run a quick errand and get something done with a lawyer, and now I'm back. But oh boy,
geez, you have so many issues. You have maybe some technical issues. You have your mom events today, and then also lawyer. Wow, you're really packing it in.
Fridays are where it's at. Apparently, last Friday was fun too. Last Friday was my second oldest's birthday.
Oh, okay.
And she wanted to play paintball. Now she's turning 13.
That's amazing.
And the paintball fields, not many of them. I mean, 13 is probably that's
you're pushing
probably as young as you can go, right? There was an axe throwing place I think she would have liked going to, but axe throwing you got to be 14. I don't know why 14, but 14, not 13. What the paintball place would let her play, would let her older sister play, and then what it would be me and my wife. 4 people on a paintball course that's not fun, right? So it's like we're not going to do that because we can't get enough people. Maybe one day we'll be able to drum up enough, but this was kind of last minute to get a bunch of other friends to play. So instead, have you seen the Gel Blasters?
The Jail Blasters or
no,
Gel Blasters?
Gel Blasters.
I've not. What is that?
So they're like I forget what they call them, but those beads, they're really small, and then you hydrate them with water, and they get to be about 6-7 mil, something like that. And it's like airsoft, but it's not airsoft because these water beads are a little bit bigger than airsoft, right? But the same concept of an airsoft gun. So got a bunch of those. So even her younger sister and her younger brother then. So we had an 8, a 10, a 13, and a 15-year-old, or a 16. No, was she 15? 13, 15. Yeah, 13, 15-year-old playing. And a friend of mine came over who plays, paintball and has played in the past. And we kind of ran them through a scenario where they had to come up and keep taking these waypoints, and we give them enough resistance to make it interesting, right? And these are really fun things. These little tiny gel blaster guns. They the one from Target, I'll tell you, I think it's Dart Zone makes knockoff Nerf guns. They have I think they call it Gel Zone or something like that. That's their gel blasters. Those are the best. They have quite a sting. They go pretty fast and they're nice and accurate.
So does it
that
leave
was
a
last
mark
Friday.
like a paintball
Yeah.
does?
Yeah, not as bad as a paintball. So if you played paintball before, it's not as painful as a paintball.
Like a splatter.
But
It's just like a dot.
but you definitely want to wear glasses. You definitely want to wear
Don't
glasses.
want to take one to the eye.
No, because the day after Friday, we went to a family reunion, and my cousins, I showed some of them after we had done all the food and the swimming and all that stuff. So my cousins took them out, and because I didn't know how much ammo I was going to need. So I made a lot of ammo. So I had like half of this cooler filled with these little gel ball things, which feel really cool to stick your hands in. But and then they, like, my cousins started shooting everybody with them, each other and all that, and running. And then all the cars that were parked as a big family reunion, we're darting in and out of cars, popping our heads up. And then, the only thing you see is heads. So getting hit all in the face. One of them took a mouthful of them, hitting the mouth, hitting the tooth. It was a fun day.
This sounds like a great time in Hamburg, PA.
Well, this wasn't in Hamburg. This was at my cousin's house.
Oh, well, where does your cousin live?
Down Lansdale area.
Okay.
So then one of the cousins grabbed.
It's a little bit more rural too. Like Lansdale's near.
Oh yeah, they live on a decent amount of property, so they have golf carts.
Near Lancaster, right?
No, Lansdale's
Philadelphia.
Towards Philadelphia. Yeah,
Sorry,
north of Philadelphia.
The other direction.
But still, lots of decent amount of property, so they got some golf carts to get around it. And one of the cousins jumps in a golf cart, and because golf cart has a windshield, so he's shooting around the windshield. We're trying to shoot over the little crack between the windshield and the roof of the golf cart to get at him. So those were fun.
It sounds like a crazy day. I'm sad that I missed it. Sounds like a party I would have enjoyed.
Yeah. We should have a Dev Friday scenario gel blasting excursion over here at the farm.
Yeah, I know. Well, last week I was a bit out of commission. Like I said, we were able to meet in the morning for our normal weekly get together here because I was dealing with another, my old age sickness that I deal with every now and then. My gout pops up. I get it from my grandfather. I've talked about this before. It's the one genetic thing that feels like health wise that I have to deal with as I grow older. So I have to watch my diet and get sleep and not get stressed out and try to live a healthy life so I don't get the flare ups.
So probably not doing the fried bread in the morning for you. That's probably.
I have to watch the salt intake. It's funny.
Is salt? Is that what
growing?
It is?
I think that's the biggest thing because growing up with my grandfather and visiting him, he wasn't much of a complainer. He was a pretty positive guy around the family. But I remember my mom always complained that when she grew up in the house, he would always complain about like having the gout. The gout would come on. And then one thing he always was careful about around meals and around eating when we go up for family events was salt. You'd always try to avoid it as much as possible, and that really makes sense because if there's like a time if I eat if my wife and I go to the movies, have some popcorn, or if I do I stopped drinking diet soda because diet soda has so much sodium in it. Mm-hmm. So I haven't drank diet soda in a while, but I think when I was away, I think there was maybe one or two times I did that. So if I start taking in more salt or sodium, it can definitely start to build up. And then like over a week, if your diet isn't right, it can kind of screw you up. But also a combination of like, you don't sleep that much, or if you're dealing with a lot of stress and just if your body's feeling run down, that's also, it could bring it on too. So I was a bit out of commission last Friday. I actually came on Wednesday. I was hoping to have the show, but then I was feeling good. Wednesday I was dealing with it though. So on the Thursday I was taking, a lot of anti-inflammatories to try to bring it back, and I was feeling good going to like Thursday. Okay, I could probably do it. And then Friday I woke up, I was like, no, I can barely get out of bed. So I was like, I'm just going to stay in bed the whole day. So
that's not we don't want to do this show from there. That's probably not.
Well, it's also not just the fact of like, I'm just the only way to deal with it because there really isn't any medication for it because just like inflammatory, it's like an anti-inflammatory issue. So I just have to take a lot of ibuprofen, like overdose on it and try to bring it back and try to bring it under control. And then if I'm able to balance that where I can overdose on enough ibuprofen for a couple of days, I can usually kind of manage it and get under control. But I don't know if you've ever taken like 12 ibuprofen in one day.
I have not.
It's definitely something I would not recommend. I did it when I was seeing my doctor about this issue, he was giving me specialized prescription for this, like pills that would, that's a higher dose of anti-inflammatory. Right. I talked to him about, so how many of these can I, prescribe, like take like 2 to 3 a day, max 3, don't take more than 3. And they said, well, yeah, the equivalent of one of these is 4 ibuprofen. I was like, oh, okay. And then I was like,
Wait, so then if I just
take ibuprofen, because, well, the medication wasn't that expensive, but I was like, well, why do I need to keep seeing you then? Because like, and he said the only thing you can do prescribe me is this one anti-inflammatory medication. You can't give me anything else. So I'm like, all right. So I just learned how to kind of deal with it myself. But yeah, once you start taking over, I would say, 6 is okay. Once you get over to 8 to 9 and
6 is
10,
about what the max is, I think, for ibuprofen.
yeah, you should really only take like 2 at a time, up to like 3 times a day or something.
I think it's a max of 6, it says in the bottle.
But I'm a heavier guy, even though I'm trying to lighten up, but kind of do it. But once you start taking that amount of anti-inflammatory, you start to feel very loopy. You kind of just want to sleep all the time, and it's not really plays with your head. So
I mean, the show is interesting enough. We didn't need to add that to it. Yeah. That would be yeah.
But feeling better. All right. So what have you been doing this week?
Well, actually,
besides being with the family and shooting these wet paintballs.
Yeah. There's I'm fascinated by the technology there. That was fun to, I think there's some open to modification, I think, on some of those, because a lot of them they're like based off of some of the similar designs from Nerf, and some of the add-ons you do for Nerf you can do for that. So it was pretty cool. But other than that, Wednesday had a friend of mine over who has started a new teaching job. So he's teaching. He does history and English, but I think this year he's just doing English, and it's like British literature, world literature, a class on APA writing, things like that. And he has the notes from the past teacher, but there's somebody else's notes, right? And it's like, I think you probably understand, sometimes teachers' notes are very easy to follow. Sometimes they're maybe more sporadic and more like, well, they make sense to me because I know my material, but they don't necessarily make sense to other people. So he's having to create his own now lesson plans and all that. So we spent the evening talking to ChatGPT a little bit and seeing what we could do, because we just pasted in. And because you used to subscribe to ChatGPT, right?
Yes, and now the semester starting up again, I may resubscribe to it.
See, okay, that's what I was wondering, because I figured I'm using this enough. I want to see what it's like. So the reason why he came over is we homeschool our kids. And I think, did we talk about this in the show? I know we talked about talking about it in one of the after the last show. I don't know that we've mentioned how we do history. Basically, my wife just reads a lot of history books and finds some educational resources. Like, believe it or not, YouTube is great. You know this.
Oh yeah, YouTube is a great historic, like, for a lot of people just love just doing their own documentaries. And they're great too. It's a lot of good history channels on YouTube you can follow, and that's what actually my daughter discovered those super early on. Before she discovered like anime and kind of crazy stuff. But she loved watching historical documentaries, and she just picked that up on her own, and she was fascinated by those. Yeah.
And there's a couple channels out there that like that one the Crash Course series is Crash Course History, Crash Course Science, and little shorter little videos on specific topics, which are really great. So she'd find the right topics. And in the past, we've done the what was it? One year they did all the revolution. Well, not all the revolutions, but they did the American Revolution, the French Revolution, the Russian Revolution, the Chinese Revolution, right? Then another year they did World War I and World War II in 2 different semesters for that year. And last year they did some ancient empires. So we're looking at, what are we going to do this year? So I fed it to ChatGPT and said, this is what we did the past couple of years. What are we missing? And we had a couple ideas. Like, one of the things that came up to me is, like, my mind was like colonialism. We haven't, you've talked about, like, the revolutions, the world wars, things before all that, but, age of exploration, all that kind of stuff, we haven't touched on that. That seems like a gap. And that's what ChatGPT said. That was one of the many things. It gave me like 10 or so. And I said, okay, that's great. Give me a course structure. We've split our year into 2 semesters. Give me structure for like a half a year on colonialism, half a year on, I guess, is it decolonialism, whatever. And it did. And I was like, okay, that's great. Now I started asking it, well, give me some resources and books that we could read, because that's usually what we do, is they'll read through books and watch some videos. So it gave me some books. I hit up my library. None of them were in there. So I was like, none of those books work. Give me other ones. They did, and we went back and forth until I could find the books that were in my library.
You actually went to a physical library? Do you step foot where there's a place with lots of books that you could just walk
No.
into and
No, I
and
went
browse?
online and I checked to see what
I
was in the
thought you went to the
library.
local Hamburg library.
Well, the local Hamburg Library is part of like the Berks Library Network. So I just said, Berks Libraries, do you have any of these? And they said, yes, this is what we have. And I said, please send them to my library. So I did have to walk into the library to pick up the order of books. But they're used to us because my daughter orders so many books in the library.
You know, back in the day, growing up,
Yeah.
when I was in high school or junior high, actually when I was about, when I could drive, when I was in high school, like that's something I enjoyed doing. I actually enjoyed, like, because I didn't want to drive too far in my car, but I think I want to get around town a little bit. As when I first got my license, one of the favorite things to do is just drive to the library.
Which for you that would have been
in Bethlehem.
The Bethlehem Library.
So the Bethlehem Library. So I didn't live too far away from it. So it's downtown Bethlehem.
Gotcha.
And so the area, so it was only about like a couple miles from where I was living. So it was just fun to just drive, just kind of walk around, browse, depending upon what you're kind of interested in, or if I am working on like a research paper or something for school. But yeah, I actually really did enjoy kind of hanging out at the library as one of those kids.
Yeah. Well, I did. I mean, I have done that. I did not do that this time. So I just fed it all, found the ones that they had, and then I grabbed that list from basically the books that I had requested, gave it back, and said, "This is the books that we have. Can you create a reading schedule?" So it did that, and I'm like, "All right." You kind of broke things down into eight sections, and for our semester, that means roughly 2 weeks a section. Can you give me the first week? And some online resources and some YouTube videos that would work for that. And it did. Some of the resources weren't there. So there was a bit of a conversation around like, hey, this isn't here anymore. Give me something else. Got the materials, got the supplement materials, and then said, build me a schedule for this 2-week period of what we should do. And it gave me the schedule. There's another AI platform out there called QuizGecko.
Never tried
and
that
you can feed it. You can feed it websites. You can feed it documents, PDFs, or YouTube videos, and it'll build quizzes. So for each YouTube video, we had a quick quiz.
That's
not hard, but just to be able to gauge retention, and make sure you're at least thinking about what you just saw. So now I have this 2-week schedule of read some of the book, read this article, watch this YouTube video each day, something different. Here's a quiz that goes with it. So basically using ChatGPT to build out a year's worth of history, a history course. And it's gone pretty well. So that takes us to Wednesday. Yeah. Teacher friend comes over and we start looking at what we can give ChatGPT, gave it the objectives from the old teacher, some context around the books that they were reading and the curriculum, and a little bit of I scanned some of the curriculum and got the table of contents as text, so it could have an idea of what was in the textbook, and then started saying, all right, so if this is what we're going to cover in a quarter, can you give me a week by week plan? And it started giving a week by week plan, and then it's like, for week 1, can you give me a day by day plan? All right, for day 1, can you just provide a rough outline for a lesson plan? It's like, yeah, spend the first 10 minutes doing this, then use 20 minutes to talk about these topics. And since again I got chat, because I'm doing this with ChatGPT, I upgraded for the Pro. I found there's a couple, one that lets you chat with your Google Drive, which is pretty cool. It's not great, but it's pretty cool.
Yeah, I saw that was a new feature that they released from the last Google I/O. They said that you could, but you make a folder in your Google Drive and you put the documents into a specific area, and then it analyze those documents.
I don't know what Google's doing, but this is ChatGPT.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, so Google, well, that makes sense because Microsoft's with basically owns ChatGPT because their investment in that and how they're integrating that in all their products. I remember that Google announced something very, very similar with Google Drive. In my mind, because I use Google Drive for almost everything. So
I probably should play with that if I can.
So my mind goes there because I haven't tried that yet to see, because that was a feature they announced that they're going to be implementing. Where say, okay, you could have a folder in your Google Drive and say, this is going to be a folder that you're going to tell the AI or Bard or whatever, whichever AI component that's using to analyze your documents, and then do some learning on that.
Yeah, so I need to play with that. But there's a plugin for ChatGPT that if you can connect it to Google Drive, it'll analyze PDFs, it'll analyze docs, and you can ask it questions about that because it'll know the context then, right?
Yeah.
So we did that. We pointed at some table contents and things like that. So we were getting some good lesson plans. And then when it talked about things like for literature, it's like, hey, go over this concept of was it Dante's Inferno, and spend 20 minutes giving some background on it. I was like, I mean, I think you could tell me what the background is, ChatGPT, because I'm not a British literature or that was, I think, World Lit. I'm not an English teacher. So how about you give me that just a rough outline of the background on Dante, and it did. And then I was like, could you make me a PowerPoint presentation? Mm-hmm. And because there's a PowerPoint presentation plugin, it just spat out. I mean, it wasn't great, right? Like, and if you know the type of presentations I give, it wasn't that. But if it was just like, this is the content on a slide, and it's a really good starting point, right? Because you don't have to copy paste, and now you can just make it what you want.
It doesn't integrate any images or anything like that into it.
I tried that. I was like, can you add some nice images? And it thought that it could, but then it didn't actually work.
Yeah.
And I got exactly the same output, but it was a real simple background, just the text, and it's like, but it gives you PowerPoint, and you're like, oh, I can edit this. So if I want to make it better, I can, but I've at least got the building blocks for all that. And I think that was what was useful to him, was this idea of it's not a daunting task. And also a little bit of what I'm playing with our history curriculum, I'm doing it 2 weeks at a time. I don't have to devise a semester's worth of a history curriculum. I have the rough outline. I could tell you what every 2 weeks is going to be, but the week before, I just ask it for the resources and do the work. So it's not like before I start school, I have to come up with no, I can come up with a couple weeks worth of the plans and just this high level, and then use this AI teaching assistant, right, to help me the week before, make sure I have everything ready to go.
Sounds just like how I prep for my college courses.
I was gonna say this is. I mean, I'm finding that
mostly what I used ChatGPT. I used it a lot last year, mostly for generating requirements and summaries for exercises. That's where I thought, because I do a lot of exercises in my courses. I don't do quizzes, even though if that quiz gecko actually looks really interesting, and if I could kind of work that into my weekly flow, that would be kind of interesting to do. But what I usually do is just have weekly exercises where I ask the students to actually produce something that they're going to submit and also present to the class, and coming up with a copy for the exercises. That's probably one of the biggest time sinks that I put together. Even if I'm following like a textbook or some, let's say, PDFs or resources that I'm having the students follow each week, it's just coming up with that copy and the requirements, trying to be as specific as possible. Because I find after teaching for like it was 10 years now, the more specific the requirements are or descriptions, the better, right? If you just want to make it more open-ended, then the students are going to get kind of lost. And they really need, because there's some students who need like a step-by-step.
They need the rails.
Yeah. Or there's some students who just say, okay, here, give me a picture of the end result, what you kind of wanted to look like, and I'll go towards that. And there's some students who need a very step-by-step approach. So I find that I've been trying to lean more into being as descriptive as possible with the exercises, and ChatGPT is great for that. Now, it's not perfect, as you've probably seen. You still have to go and edit it and revise it, but it gives you a good starting point that could generate probably about 80, maybe 90% of the copy that you need, and then you just have to go revise it and modify it for your purposes.
So to go back to the birthday party last week, where we're shooting each other with gel blasters, right? I wanted to give them the idea of, if you've played paintball before, you know there's rules, right? You get hit, you put your hand up, you say you're hit. People don't shoot you when you do that. You would be surprised how hard of a concept that was for my 8-year-old boy to figure out, right? Because I'd be like, hit, and he'd just keep shooting me. I'm like, I'm hit. Then the one time he was kind of a
You're
quarter.
Telling him to stop having fun. What do you think he's going to do?
I spin around and I shoot him, and he's like hit, and I'm like walking away, and he just lights me up. I'm like, what are you doing? He's like, well, you shot me. I'm like, you can't. So some rules I thought would be good. And I wanted to make it as immersive and as like disconnected from me as possible. So it's like you really get in that scenario thing. So I went into ChatGPT and I'm like, hey, I'm going to play a gel blaster game with my 13-year-old, my 15-year-old.
Going to generate some instructions for him.
It's exactly right. I said, so basically when you're shot, you have to put your hand up shot and go back to your spawn point. Your spawn point moves to whatever your next waypoint is. Like as you take over the waypoints, you take over the waypoints by removing the flag. And I gave a couple other rules. And I'm like, what's missing in these rules? What's unclear? And it gave a couple things. It's like, can you respawn forever? Or do you have so many lives? I'm like, no, it's, you can respawn forever. So I gave it the answers. And it's like, okay, here's some other things that are unclear. I gave it that. And like, so here's the answers. Now, can you generate these directions in a way that sounds like a military exercise? And that's what it spat out. It was like, recruits this, and this will be a live fire exercise, and like all this stuff. And then I said, all right, I've got like a map that has point A, point B, point C, point D. I described like the ones where they start. One's like an IBC tote up a field, and then there's ones over in the woods, and they're gonna have to move there. And here's like the storyline: you're moving there to catch up and get some information from a spy who's at this fourth waypoint. Can you make that seem like an operation? And it did. It labeled each one, and whatever little I gave these little instructions, and it filled them out so you could understand it better. And did that a couple times. It basically generated the whole scenario play, and with different voices too, because like the first page of instructions, I want to sound commanding, like it's from a military, a high-ranking military official. The next one, they get this like note from a spy that tells them where to go to defuse the bomb. Make it more pensive, like the person in a voice like they're writing it hurriedly, and there's less sureness about it. And yeah, so I mean, it's not the same as giving exercise instructions to your class, but I can definitely see that. You're like, here's the little bit of it. Now, can you just almost help me add what's needed?
So let's talk about the tech a little bit.
Yeah.
With this. So because you said you paid for it, and I paid for it too in the past too myself.
Mm-hmm.
And did you try to do this with first the GPT 3.5?
I've actually stopped just using that completely.
Okay, so because you felt the big need to go up to the 4 because you felt like the results weren't that good for what it was producing, and it was actually worth the money, because ChatGPT 4 to get that, you have to get the plus, and it costs $20 a month. Yep. Which if you use it every day, which like I said, for during the semester, if I'm using it every day or every other day, it felt kind of worth it. After the semester, when I stopped using as much, I would just maybe use it like once a week. It kind of felt like I don't know if it's worth the $20 a month for me anymore. So what I did discontinue the subscription at the end of the semester. And actually, it was interesting because Google AI, or I ever say Google AI, they actually should just call it Google AI, but Google with their I/O event, they said they were updating Bard, they're increasing improving the language model, they're building all these AI tools around it. And I was like, let me get Bard to try, even though we both know that when Bard was first released, it wasn't that
terrible.
Good.
It was terrible.
But for the summer, I've actually been using Bard a lot. Now,
is it better?
It's definitely better. It's
okay.
not. It's interesting. If I could compare it, I think it's kind of between 3.5 and GPT-4. It's definitely not. It's definitely not as good as GPT-4, and I would say that. Like, I think it's because there are results that I kind of like the fact if it doesn't have an answer, it'll just say no. I'm just a language model. I can't do that. So it just says up front, if it has, you reach its limitations based on your query or what you're trying to ask it for. But I find that it is pretty good at doing things that, if you were using 3.5 or GPT 3.5 and you felt like the results weren't good enough, just try it out in Bard and see what the results are. And I think it's been not too bad. But like I said, I think there is a lot of still limitations to it, even though they've been slowly improving it. But I'm considering probably going back to GPT-4 for the the semester starts, probably using that again. But I have been using just Bard for just a lot of like just simple, especially with when I'm working on coding projects and kind of working, asking just stuff I would use ChatGPT for, just to, explain this part of a documentation or something like that. If I'm trying to learn a new language or a new framework or something like that, and I need to have an example of how to use it, Bard's actually really, really good at that. So, yeah.
What I found too, with last week was my first time playing with plugins in ChatGPT. They've been around for a while. But the first time actually going in and playing with them. And there was one that was read the code, and this part I find a little bit annoying about OpenAI's management of it all. Like, ChatGPT has been able to do different things at different times. There are times now where it won't even give me links to YouTube videos, and it'll tell me just search for them and you should find them. Other times it gives me links. They're broken because, it's, and I understand why I think they're trying to kind of give it prompts to not give links, because 2020, what is it? 2021 is September 2021 is when it stopped. So a lot of the links are broken anyway. But there was a time when it would go out and read the internet. Now it won't go out and read the internet.
And I even wondered too, because I was curious about some of the functionality behind the scenes, because I actually been starting to think about using OpenAI's API and kind of integrating with that just to kind of see how it works.
Yeah.
And watching some videos from the developers just on YouTube, just talking about, their processes and what do they think about the system. They even acknowledge the fact of like half the time they don't know what's going on. Like they built this language model and they're still figuring it out themselves,
because they're kind of instructing it with their own prompts to tell it what it can and cannot do, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, it's like when they expect certain results come out of it and it does something different, they have to kind of work through that problem. So it is a very interesting. They built the system without fully understanding. That's actually an issue that a lot of people have with it. That developers have created this language model or this AI model that they don't fully understand. So is there some risk there? I think from the results, and I think people should be a little bit careful about that.
I'm playing with Bard right now. It's looking a little bit better, for sure.
So what I was thinking about doing, because like I said, I think Bard does have some limitations. I think from a coding standpoint, if you're learning how to code and learning, like I said, a framework, a library, or something like that, or a language, it's really, really good. And that's what I've been mostly using for the summer when I've been working on some projects. But when I'm actually want to generate copy that a person's going to read or it's going to want to relate information, I definitely think ChatGPT is for. But one thing I always like to do, and you know me, Tim, because I have an entrepreneurial mindset. So when I think about a problem, I think about, well, why can't I just make a product out of this? To solve my problem first, and then possibly that I could make some money off of, because that's where always my mind goes, and I go down the rat holes with that too. Like the no web code, it's totally solved my problem.
No web code,
right? So it's the MVPs out there. I'm actually doing some work on it in the past week. I haven't updated what's online right now, but I've taken the demo, convert it into a componentized model, with some TypeScript and kind of reworking it. And my goal is to just add some basic storage to it and some basic authentication with some accounts, so that when I'm using it in class, students can log in, they could create their web pages, and they could just have them stored, and just give a good kind of visual web editor that they don't have to go to Webflow or another web editor they had to pay for, right? So just having a kind of a free version for them to use. That's really what I wanted to make it for. But I was thinking about, if I'm using ChatGPT and I have to pay $20 a month for it, because $20, that's still something, right? Still something. It still hits the pocketbook. Still, you still feel it a little bit, especially when I'm trying to always watch my subscriptions, because that's something that you could definitely subscribe. There's $10, $5, $20 subscriptions for services or things you use, whether or not they be for work or entertainment purposes. It just they add up.
They do, yeah.
It's death by 1,000 cuts, death by 1,000 subscriptions. So I try to avoid those, and I try to trim those back as much as possible. So when I'm going to add in a new subscription, I do think $20 too. Like I said, if you're using it every day, especially for work purposes, I do think there's value in that. So I think, that's a fine amount to use. But I'm curious though, for just my purposes and how much I use it, using the API model, because it's interesting too, the pricing with that. So they have like a token-based model with the pricing. So and a token is basically like they say it's like a certain number of characters or parts of words, or it could be words if they're smaller words. So, and they're not really, I guess if I had really dug into the documentation, I could probably figure out exactly how they quantify a token.
Right.
But a token is just, they say it's a part of a word, right? So think about it as a certain number of characters. So for 1,000 tokens, so if you were going to put in, let's say, 750 words, or if you want to actually have it analyze or have it spit back, it's going to charge you for that. So let's say for 3 cents to 6 cents, if you want to use the GPT-4 model for every 1,000 tokens. So I was curious about, for the type of questions, also type of response. My responses back, even though I'm talking about my exercises or what I want to produce from ChatGPT, could be a good amount of text, but I actually don't think it's that much text. So I'm curious if I could just build a basic form that I could ask a question, just also have it get a response, basically do exactly the same thing I want to do to see if I could use the model, ask the exact same questions I would use in the open
usage,
in ChatGPT, and just kind of pay for it with the API.
Now, is there any difference there? Is it still the chat? Is the API giving you a chat interface too? Like,
no, you have to build that. I don't think they have like widgets for that, but you
right. But I mean, is it more than just UI there that they're doing? Are they adding anything else to instruct the model to keep things in like a conversational thread? Like how are
no, that's up to you.
But so you would just use the API to be like, hey, this relates to.
Correct. Yeah.
But that's in the API, and that's not something else that's.
Oh, that's a good. So to have some type of contextual history, of the
because when I'm, and it's not always great, right? Like I've seen it tell me one thing, and then be like, okay, can you then add some more detail to those things? And then it's like telling me something completely, like it forgets that it. If I said make me a grocery list and it's apples, bananas, and oranges, I'm like, okay, just add quantities to that. It's like, okay, yeah, you want baked beans, and I'm like, wait a second, no, you said I wanted what changed here. So sometimes it loses that context, but a lot of times it's working from this thread. So how hard is it to add that?
So I would have that's something I have to look in the documentation. Like I said, I'm just starting to think about working on this because
like making your own,
just make it a quick little, like I said,
somebody's
a quick
little done that, right?
Quick
like,
little, yes, but I want to understand. I want to understand the API and kind of. I'm curious from a financial aspect, just how expensive it is. So if like for my purposes, can I get away paying $5 a month in API calls compared to $20 a month? That actually seems kind of worth it. And then also kind of gets the idea of, okay, so if you kind of have a good understanding of how expensive this API is for
how much money you want to make an hour?
Excuse me?
How much money do you want to make an hour?
Like if I had my dream hourly,
if you like just your kind, like if you're maybe you don't want to say this out loud because
I would, but you have to define the context here of how
but like no, you're working on your own. What's your hourly rate? Like if you're going to charge a company to hire you per hour?
It depends on what it's between. I would say between. Well, okay, I'd want to go high.
Right. Well, okay. Let's say you're worth $150 an hour.
Yeah, that's what I was doing. Like 150, 200. So that range depending upon what the requirements are.
So, how many hours are you going to spend researching this ChatGPT thing? Just out of curiosity. just out of curiosity.
It's learning, Tim. It's building that knowledge base.
How many hours is it going to take you to build? Because it takes you 10 hours.
But if you're going to
10 hours. Okay,
but this goes back to the developer. If you want to build a product, you have to understand the platform, right?
I'm just saying, $2,000 worth of your time that's an awful lot of months at $20 an hour. I'm just saying. I'm
not saying it's gonna be the best financial investment up front. Not sure if it's going to pay off in the long term with doing this learning, but I'll have a better understanding about it. But
that
also,
is true.
Because it is interesting if you do want to build like an AI product, like your Quiz Gecko, right, or all these AI products that are popping up. You really do have to understand the pricing model behind it, so that especially if you're building this on top of these AI platforms, they're charging you per request.
Mm-hmm.
So,
or like you said, per token. It's almost like how big. Which is why a lot of these things do have a limit for how much text they're going to absorb.
And that's what I don't fully understand of like how much. So if I ask a question that's like a couple sentences, and then it spits back, let's say, I don't know, 3 paragraphs of text, and then it has let's say if I'm trying to work through a problem, and let's say that happens, let's say 3 or 4 times as I'm kind of working through a problem, I want to get and I get that final end result that I'm happy with. How much did that cost me? From an API request. I think that is valuable to know, especially if you would be thinking about making a product around this and having a good sense of that. So I'm just curious. Like I said, I'm not
rebuild ChatGPT.
Not saying rebuild it. Like I said, basically just 2 text boxes, right? A question and then a response, right? That's basically all you would need to have. And just to kind of do a little bit of testing just to see what the results are, just working purely through the API. Also, not saying this is something I would give to my students, like the no web code. That is something I'm definitely going to be showing that to my students, and I want them to use it because I think it'll be a good editor for them to use. But this is just for my purposes. If I can get to this point where I can just generate some copy for my online classes or for my course content, I think that could be kind of interesting.
And then maybe tweak it with your own prompts and things like.
And then maybe I could turn it into senzei.net.
Sensei.
The next generation of educational AI.
That's right. That's right. Because, folks, Mark is a member of the Domain of the Month Club, and he has Senzei, which is with a Z, right? SENZEI .net.
Yes.
You went for a .net?
Actually, the name came from, because back when I was managing my the esports club at the school, I was like, I wanted to have like a cool handle for my
That was just
game.
like a year ago, right?
Yeah, it was a couple of years. Well, I was managing for like 3 years. So I stopped doing that. I resigned from that position just to free me up on some time going into this year, because I definitely want to continue on with the next transition of my life. And I didn't want to spend time managing the esports club anymore. But when I was playing with the students and online and when, in the game, I thought it'd be I just want to have a kind of a fun handle. And I thought, I was into, went to Japan a few times and like Japan culture, and sensei is the meaning of that is teacher, right? In Japanese culture. So I couldn't get sensei with the s.com or .net, but I could get it with a Z, and why not? Because in the web world, you could always replace
an S. Oh yeah, well, you can replace an S with
letters
no
with an S with a Z, like
you
that.
can drop vowels out and just not have the vowels. So is it just Sensei or mysensei.net?
No, sensei.net. I want to keep it simple.
So, yeah, right. Yeah. So that was your profile, and now we're going to put an AI platform.
Now we're going to build a product around it. Why not?
Why? I feel like there's been I feel like that's been done before in that order. So that's going to be your ChatGPT competitor built on ChatGPT's underlying technology.
And like what I've resolved to, when I, instead of going down huge project plans and schedules and trying to think about how big I want to make this be, I'm really just trying to solve my problem. I just want to do that first, right? Just get that first minimal experiment out there and see if it works. And then if you want to build on top of it, and then see where it goes. And also, like, it's a good portfolio piece too.
The chat thing.
Well, both having like the, everything I'm building on top of AWS, using the CDK and it kind of,
does AWS have an AI offering?
They have a like a machine learning. They do, but it's not like as what they want to do is basically build the infrastructure to build ChatGPT on. So they do have their own kind of learning model platforms where you could basically build your own models. And you could do that, but you have to basically code it and script it to build that into the model that you want. So it doesn't have like a platform like Bard or like ChatGPT where you could just go and just query it like with an API and just, it doesn't have like it does have, and listen, it does have pre-existing models that you could use as a starting point for a product and build on top of, and you could reference it with an API, but it's not as, it's not like a ChatGPT or Bard.
Gotcha.
Because they want to be the infrastructure for the next generation of AI. That's what they're going for.
Did you take the test yet?
I have not taken the next test. I'm going to. Don't worry. I'm thinking the 8th of September. I think I'm looking at my schedule because, like I said, the starting school, we didn't want to conflict with that. So I'm thinking like the first week in September. Because, like I said, it's still and we will be talking more about this. Like I said, the
summer of
Mark is going to turn into the season of Mark.
season.
Where my plans have not changed. And like I talked about in the beginning of summer, yes, my plan was, if, depending upon how the time and everything and how it worked out, I was always planning on going back teaching. But I will probably announce next week that there's definitely going to be something more definitive about my timeline. And
next week?
Yes. So I'm going to be talking to a few people at school, and I think we'll have a definite confirmation of future plans or timeline and deadline in order to reach the next step of my career. So
as we follow along in the season of Mark. So.
Yes. So yeah, I'm still working on the certifications. My plan is to do the solutions architect, to get the developer certification. Definitely going to work on getting those. Let's say I want to, at least get the architect done in September, because most of the job ads I've been seeing, especially for the cloud engineer, solution architect type positions, they usually want you to have at least 2 certifications within those areas. So I'll still be getting those.
Gotcha.
But also along the way too, the reason why I've been spending more time the past few weeks, not as much focus on the test, is because I need to build some projects around this. And also I think it helps me understand the platforms better too. There's only so much you can learn from reading a book or doing practice exams.
No.
You have to build something on top of it.
So you're actually deploying things on AWS.
It brings it all together. And I do a little bit of both. So I feel like, okay, I did a lot of reading, did a lot of research and learning and about the platforms. Let me go and then build something, at least an initial version of something, and then be happy with it. Maybe then I can let it go for a little bit and then go back to doing some reading and then kind of go back and forth. I think that's kind of a good way to kind of learn and kind of practice. Because what I did for the first exam, the cloud, I don't even know the name of it because it was at the beginning of summer. But I took that the cloud foundations or something like that. The first initial exam, which I felt like I possibly could have just not have taken and just gone to the solution architect based on my experience. But I thought it's been so long since I've thought about taking a certification exam. I just want to do it for the experience and just to kind of have a good understanding of what the exam looks like, how the questions are formatted, how much study would be involved. So it was actually a good learning experience. So I could understand, how much reading or learning do I need to kind of put into the exam. So I did cram for it. I didn't study too much for it, but let's say the first 2 to 3 days before I took the exam, I took a lot of practical exams and I kind of crammed through that. It was enough to kind of, it was passed it and it was fine. But that also kind of gave me a good understanding. Okay, if I want to go take these harder tests, that's going to be a little bit more involved and have a good understanding of how the questions are going to be posed to that are, these questions are mostly solving problems. How would you solve this problem based on the requirements of it? So I want to have just a better kind of good understanding about that. Also, I don't want to be one of those certified solution architects that don't know what they're talking about either, Tim. So I want to be able to actually apply it. Be able to just show or document that I can build on top of the platforms and not just talk about it.
And the solutions are usually how are you going to arrange these AWS pieces?
And we talked about this, the type of position I think that I do that idea of a position of where I basically just work with somebody who, they have, let's say, some internal infrastructure that's mostly on premise, and they want to take that and maybe take a part of that or certain components and bring it into the cloud, or let's say they have an application that they want to rework and to adapt to a kind of using a cloud type infrastructure. I do think it's kind of good design. The idea of designing a system for that and designing a plan for that, which is basically what solution architects do. They just here's the plan, give it to them and good luck and let me know if you have any questions. But actually, and I do, because from a relationship standpoint, I think that would be kind of a really interesting relationship, kind of building and kind of helping them find that solution. But I also like to build things, right? So I think kind of the cloud engineer role where you're actually producing something where you could actually, not just take or give them a design that they're going to then implement on their own, but kind of help them with that process too, more as a consultant.
Yeah. And next week, more finality on that, apparently.
Well, more finality from my current position.
Oh, okay.
So that's what I'm working on. I feel for peace of mind, I need to have a good plan. And so I talked to a couple people at school about it and they were in a good place. And so I'm going to be finalizing some things next week with that. And then I'll definitely set up the timeline. It'll be more definitive.
The timeline of Mark.
Yes. Well,
all right.
The timeline of when the season of Mark will end, put it that way. So,
well, I had fried bread dough for breakfast, so I am tired. I don't know about you, but I was just going to pass out the rest of the day. Just going to take a nap.
I still have to go to the gym this afternoon, Tim.
You're going to go to the gym. Oh boy, I've left off of that this summer because I was getting up early and doing things outside. So
as long as you're being active.
Yeah. But the past week or two is nothing's gone on. So I probably need to get back into something.
It sounds like you do the exact same thing I try to do is not eat too early. At least I know I don't recommend it for everybody, depending upon your metabolism. My wife could never do that. She has to, when she gets up.
Most important meal of the day, Mark.
When she gets up in the morning, she has to eat something. And she eats something small, like some yogurt and granola or something like that. No, I can't. Actually, I don't. My stomach needs to settle down. Even if I drink coffee too early in the morning, it upsets my stomach. So I have to wake up by a couple hours. But yeah, I actually prefer if I don't eat till 11 or 12 o'clock. Yep. That's actually what I prefer.
That's usually what I do. Yeah. Yep.
So it looks like you got the diet down. You just got to keep being active. So
I'm not sure. I'm not sure any of those things are actually all that's needed, but yeah, maybe, yeah. Need to get back to getting downstairs and doing the workout, or actually get outside. And there's still some more stuff that needs to get done this summer. So
one thing I did want to talk to you about, I know we're going to start to run out of time here, and it doesn't have to be a long conversation, but the one thing I was thinking about, and this has actually been a common thing over the summer, is we kind of summer schedules are always crazy with family, where let's say you're working and you do some family trips and you're kind of bouncing back and forth between work and family. And that happens more in the summertime, at least for me, it does. And I think, it seems like your schedule too, it seems like it might happen to you too. And I think for developers too, coming back and getting back on schedule or getting back in the flow.
Mm-hmm.
And what are some things that you find is useful for, let's say, if you come back from, let's say, a family trip or just a time with the family or away from work, you need to start being productive again. You need to kind of get your head wrapped around that. Because one thing I was finding too, multiple times during the summer, was like, it would take me a little bit to kind of get back into it. Like it was kind of, especially
when you're going back to looking at the AWS stuff and trying to
when I'm working on my own, and
Yeah.
because I'm not working with a client, I'm not teaching a class where I'm kind of put on the spot. I have to get this done right at this moment. But I'm kind of working on my own projects, trying to stay motivated and trying to produce something based on the schedule that I have in my mind, but getting back into that flow, feeling like you're being productive. And that was something I kind of dealt with a couple times this summer. And then I came just like this week too, like the beginning of the week, because I was a little bit sick at the end of last week. And then also before that, we were away for a few days in Delaware. So I kind of stepped away from work for almost a week. And then kind of getting back in the flow going into this week, it did take me a little bit of time to kind of think about why am I dragging my feet? Why is it taking me so long to kind of get focused and to get my head back in a better space where I can be productive and feel like I'm actually making some progress on what I'm working on.
Yeah. I mean, that's a tough question, because it does happen, and it's easy. I mean, sometimes when you're talking about code and that type of problem, there are sometimes when it's like, oh yeah, I'm in the zone and I can figure this out and I can troubleshoot this, and other times it's just like, no, I can't even think through it.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't necessarily know if there's a great like reason or indicator as to why you may be in one position or the other. It can be definitely hard to get back into that swing of things.
It's almost like a context switch, because I'm learning about that by myself, where switching from one context to the next for me is actually troubling, or not troubling. It's challenging, or just where I like the spontaneity, and I like working, let's say teaching, especially teaching. Let's say I teach one class in the morning, teaching another class in the afternoon. I have to switch kind of what I'm doing. Actually, I kind of like that. But at the same time, it's like when I actually want to produce something and be productive, I actually want to feel like, I'm writing code, or I'm working on something I actually need to have in a project, and I want to be able to produce something. Switching from one project to the next, or stepping away from a project, coming back to it, takes me a little bit of time. Just I'm going to talk to you here, Tim. I finally feel comfortable about 40 minutes into this, or 50 minutes into the show.
Finally feeling comfortable.
I finally feel comfortable talking to you, because we step away for a week and we come back. It takes me a little bit to kind of get into it. So
I can see that. And I don't know if I have any great insight, or maybe like the recognition,
or the people you work with. Did they talk about the developers that you work with? And
it's a great concept too, because I can even see, as I've changed and my positions have changed, or where I'm working has changed. Back when I was just doing contracting for a lot of different clients, right? I'd work all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I think maybe the immediate, like, everything's a context switch. Sorry,
yeah, and you were switching between projects. Every project was different when you.
Yeah, I'd be working for multiple people at a time, and I would have no problem. Like, I would work weekends if I needed to, and take time off when I needed to. I find that now, since my role is a little bit different and some of the expectations are a little bit different, I generally don't work at all on weekends. And I find myself, I don't want to say frustrated, but sometimes, like, if my phone will pop up an email that comes in on the weekend about work stuff, I'm almost like, stop. I don't even want to. I don't want to think about that right now, because I've kind of gotten this place where I do Friday, I switch context completely. Now it's like, what are we going to get accomplished here? And I don't want to think about work.
So in your mind, you have an easier time letting go of it at the end of the week, not even thinking about work too much during the weekend, and then coming to the new week that you kind of feel like, okay, I can reset and get back on track.
And that can be a tough thing on a Monday, right? Like to be like, all right, now I have to drop all of this and then reacquaint myself with this other thing. And I'm not saying like neither is better. I don't think like I'm not saying, oh, that's the right way to do it, because I did it the other way. I did the other way where I'm bouncing around and pretty much changing those contexts much quicker. It's just where I find myself now, whether it's because of how my family's grown or because of the responsibility and the type of job I have, and the fact that, you know, there's times when I was the only developer on a project. So if something went wrong, I'm getting the call. Right now, there's a whole team. Right. So I'm not in that position with any client right now. So,
see, I always I know we have different opinions about going back to the office.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was something that I actually enjoyed about the office, because it was that separation, you know, separating from home and work.
Right.
And once you step into the office, it was a physical switch in a sense, where you kind of forced you have to do it. That's why I do like going back on campus and teaching. You know, I feel like I could definitely enjoy doing remote classes online and work from home. I definitely love that. But at the same time, though, I kind of love the physical contextual switch of going from home to work and then be able to make that change. So I think for me, you know, be able to do that from home is a little bit, my personality is just a little bit more, it's a little bit more challenging for me.
Now I have a similar thing where it's like, I basically only work here. Like, what do I want to say? I don't do much here other than work. So for me, coming up to my desk, like I'll leave it on Friday. I won't come back until Monday.
Okay.
And so there's a little bit of that.
So you don't do like a lot of personal projects or anything like that outside of work at your main workstation?
Not a whole lot. Sometimes I do. Sometimes there's like, no, there's things that are easier for me to do with the technology that I have here, with the tools. And like, yeah, like yesterday it was my mom's birthday, so I was laser engraving a couple things for her and doing actually that teacher got him something and had ChatGPT. I was like, hey, I'm going to give him something and it's going to be in a card holder. Can you write something witty? And had ChatGPT write something, which was kind of funny. But I do that from here because that's what I can do here, right? But a lot of times the weekend's filled with things that aren't project related. So in the week, maybe I'll be doing other things up here, but for the weekend, it's a lot of it's just not even at my desk. So that switch of, okay, it's Monday, going to go back upstairs, going to go to the office. I think that may aid in it, though I completely understand that and can't say, well, I don't know, maybe it's like a pool, right?
You just have to jump in, just do it.
Sometimes, because like I can see sometimes on Mondays, I'm like, how am I going to get back? How am I going to, like, I see all the things that are waiting for me. I know all the things that are waiting for me on a Monday. And it's like, how am I going to get back into this? But then it's just like, you do it. And then you're like, all right, when Monday's ended and done, it's like, all right, no, I'm back in this groove. And now I'm thinking about these things and I've reacquainted myself. But at times it does seem, and I think I don't know if that's exactly what you're saying, but when you're like, how am I going to, I don't know if you were saying, how are you going to get back to it, or you just have a hard time getting back to that project that you want to do? Yeah.
Cause I've been learning about what you're talking about is like building momentum.
Right.
I feel like
you're
making some progress. You feel like you're getting some energy back. And also your mind's starting to kind of focus more. Like I said, maybe also last week I was sick, and so my mind was not in a good shape. But just getting your foot back into the right place, taking that first foot forward, kind of towards what you're working on, even if it's something small. Where you open up your text editor and look at your code and pick out some little small part of it that you need to work on.
Just something to get engaged in that context.
And then that gets the ball rolling and builds some momentum with it. So something I've been learning more about myself this summer, of saying like, okay, just don't put that first step off, because sometimes I may get in a weird mental place and I feel like I struggle with myself saying, oh, I can't do it. I can't do it. I can't, like, it's like something's keeping me back. But really it's just a matter of, you just need to start.
And for me, I think it is that, like, the thing that sometimes holds you back is looking at saying there's so much.
Yep.
How am I gonna do all this again? And it's, well, yeah, you could look at it and be like, but like you said, it's momentum. Once you get the momentum started, once you get progress made, it's stopped now. So how am I going to get this train moving again? But once you just start a little bit, then you tend to get in the groove. And maybe that's it. Maybe it's like a pool. Just jump in. Just jump in. You want to do it, Mark. Just fire up that text editor
I know.
Or whatever it is, you know,
My
that JetBrains IDE.
Man, we got to get back to talk about some setups. I have a sweet setup here. I'm so happy with my NeoVim. I'm using Doom Emacs on the side. I got a 3 monitor setup. I even added a third monitor, which we can talk about.
Third monitor. You're
for doing
catching
what
up
you
to
do.
me.
Actually inspired by you. I have like a portrait turn. I rotate the monitor. Just have a nice portrait.
Oh, nice,
kind of,
nice.
Vertical monitor to use to kind of have just code or notes or documentation that I could have. So, yeah.
It's next week. Our setups. I don't know. We've talked about our setups a lot.
I know.
You added a monitor? Cool.
Yeah. No, I was thinking about that because I was like, oh, I have this extra monitor here, and I know I could turn it. And I was like, oh, I'll just do that. Even though I have some really wide curved monitors that I've mostly just been using like a 2 monitor setup here. But I was like, oh, can I make room on my desk? Can I push the 2 monitors over and then put this really long monitor to the side and just have it kind of set up? And I didn't know how useful it would be. But yeah, just kind of keep it just as a reference point.
Nice, right?
I don't edit on it at all. But
Okay.
I just have like unless I'm doing notes. If I have like my Doom Emacs, that's where I keep my notebook and my notes that I keep track of. So I might do some note editing on there, but really it's just for documentation. Maybe also having like a repo on GitHub that I just want to look at the source code, just so I can have something to compare to, especially when I'm kind of learning a library or a framework or something like that. And so I need to kind of reference some examples or some. It's nice to have on the side.
Yeah, I find that very useful. Of course, I've got 5 years, so look at the other computer, and I need to work on getting some, like, designing some custom mounts so they're actually set right and they move with my dad. There's stuff to be done here. My desk is an organizational nightmare. So,
all right, well, I hope you get some rest today, or at least tonight.
I'm gonna need to. I ate this morning. This is terrible. I can't even think.
Like I said, start moving, get moving. Just start,
yeah.
Or if you have to get the paintball guns out, just start shooting them outside. Just do some target practice. That'll work.
Give somebody else the paintball guns, then I'm like, I gotta run because this is not gonna work out well. All righty, I'll talk to you later on. See you next week.
Yep. Take care.
Have fun. See you.
Bye.